And this panel will also be broadcasted on the One Vibe Africa podcast, which is Diaspora Connect, and they seek to demystify the lives of Africans here in the diaspora for people back home and to create a sense of engagement between here and there. And they'll be watching us on the Diaspora Connect. Thank you. And so I would like to give every panelist a moment to kind of speak about their overview of their work and what they do at their organizations.
Okay. Thank you for the amazing work you're doing, Latio, and to the board of Africa Now. Thank you for having us. It's a true privilege to be sitting with Nourah and Pires. These are powerful women, and it's truly an honor. One Vibe was started as a DJ. I was a DJ for like 6 years right after high school. So when I was in Form 3, those of us who are in Africa understand the system. I was, doing gigs with other DJs while in high school. So in 2007, 2008, right after the elections in Kenya, those of you who know the history around that time, thousands of people, were displaced. Over 1,000 people were dead. And my hometown, Kisumu, was one of the most impacted places. And at that time, those of you who know the radio and the entertainment industry at that time know that Metro FM was a reggae radio station, 100% reggae, and I was a reggae DJ, so we had 4 hours on radio every Sunday. That's where One Vibe Africa started from. So from being a DJ business to turning into a non-profit organization, we were first registered in 2008 February in Kenya. So when I moved to Seattle in 2010, I brought my story and the work of One Vibe here and started connecting with people like Owino Runga, who is Macklemore's trumpet player. And at the time when we were, changing our work with One Vibe from a DJ company to a non-profit organization, we had really seen the impact of music out of just show and entertainment. This was the first event. We had organized a public event after the violence, bringing people together. People who had been kicked out of our hometown were coming back. And so this show was called Unite the People Concert. And it gave us a chance to really witness the power of music, where people were coming into a venue without weapons after working with pangas and guns for over 3 months. So after seeing this experience, we decided that we want to use this same power of music to, bring youths together and give them alternatives to the violence and the drugs that the politicians were giving. Politicians give people money and drugs in order for them to cause violence and, kill their moms, not just sell them, but kill them, and those of us who come from conflict countries know that young people are always in the front line. And music is also something that young people, relate to. So we were able to, figure out that these people that were fighting and killing each other were all listening to our show on radio. So when in Africa, when people are listening to radio shows, people always send dedications. I want you to play this song for me. I want you to do this. So we figured out that these people are from these two opposite sides. What can we do in order for them to come together through the power of music? And so once we did that, we wanted to do more, especially because people are also asking us, why can't you do what you did? It was hard for people to describe what it was that we had done. But being right in the middle of it, I just felt that this experience should be repeated over and over again. So out of that, we created an education, music and art program in my hometown. And at that time, my mom had an orphanage home where she gave us, one single room in 2013, where we started with painting classes. And then, we started with about 68 kids that were just doing painting. Then we brought elders who were playing benga music, and they were teaching kids how to play benga, because preserving our culture is also important. So teaching kids how to play traditional guitar style, And now we've evolved. We've served over 1,000 youths. We've created over 20 jobs in Seattle, we've organized, festivals and cultural events, some happening at Seattle Art Museum, the Museum of Pop Culture. Over 10,000 people have attended our events in Kenya and Seattle since 2013. We've reached over 3 million people digitally. We've created over 270 videos on YouTube that we have over 2.5 million views throughout our channel. So and as we speak, we're in the process of transitioning so that I can work full-time for One Vibe, because there's a lot of partnership opportunities that can now get the organization to a place where it can hire a full-time executive director. So outside of all of that, I've also worked in the logistics industry here in Seattle, because in the diaspora, you have to do what you need to do in order for you to sustain your family. So I've been working for one of the third largest logistics company in the world. It's called Expeditors. And so, prior to coming to the US, I worked in over 6 countries in Africa. And one of the things I was doing was moving things like cement and moving construction crews and designing clinics and schools in Kenya, then going and building them in Ghana, like in Ho region, in Volta region, in South Sudan, between the border of South and North, in a place called Abiai, a little town called Agok. So, I saw that the same problems that Africans were having in Kenya are the same problems they were having in South Sudan or Ghana, and even here in Seattle. So, but music was the thing that was connecting all of us. And so I felt that, continuing to enhance the use of music and bringing people together and then building relationships to grow the work that we're doing was something that was important. And so that's why when you hear about One Vibe Africa, music and this energy that brings people together is very, very prominent. Thank you.
Hi. Habari. Hali zenu.
Salam.
First of all, can we give shout out to our amazing organizers? I'm just super honored to be here and so grateful to sit among these amazing, powerful people. My name is Nourah, and you don't need my introduction because you heard it already, but how I started my job at the organization that I work currently, African Women Business Alliance. It's a small grassroots organization focusing on closing both gender and racial gap in business development by providing African women immigrants and Black women diaspora with holistic approach and culturally responsive tools required to start, grow, and scale a business through training, coaching, one-on-one coaching, tailored workshops, marketplace, and access to seed capital. It's a brand new startup that started actually yesterday. I kind of gave a toast for our 2-year anniversary. I'm so grateful that I'm able to, thank you. Thank you so much. But how I started this work, I've always been curious to understand the economic justice for Black diaspora. Even when I was a little girl back home, I grew up in Tanzania. I grew up in Dar, originally from Somalia. So I lost my mom early, and her death truly shook me. Like, as a woman and as a young girl growing up, I was grateful to be adopted by an amazing aunt of mine who took me to private school in Tanzania and really took care of me. But I lost my parents early on, and our families, myself, oops, I don't know what happened. Hello? I have no idea. Perhaps my voice. Hello? It's working, yeah. Anyway, so the frustrations of understanding how, as soon as my father died, our family basically collapsed in a way. And I questioned a lot of things about gender and how we understand gender and why a man and a father ought to be a provider for not only his family, his wife and his family, but also when his 2 brothers died, he had to take over, right? And taking care of other family members. And that gave a lot of pressure to my dad that he ended up with a heart attack, so he passed away. And then after that, my mom passed away. So anyways, long story short, black diaspora in general, through the colonization history, through the slavery, we have not inherited history of...
No, I'm just saying, tell it. Tell it.
Black diaspora, like globally, we do not inherit a history of economic justice and economic prosperity. And so growing up as a young girl, I realized the importance of understanding where economic prosperity can prosper within the family structure, so domestic to public sphere. And I've always had a passion of gender equity from an early age, thank God. You know, sometimes you go through troubles, you go through hardship in life that they shape you. They truly shape you into a I'm not going to be here today, and I would not be able to do the work that I do if I did not lose my parents. I don't think I would have grown up to be incredibly frustrated by the global landscape of where black diaspora fits and where is our economic justice. Had I not lost my dad, had I not lost my mom, had I not lost my brother, had I not been pushed to grow up and take care of my little sister and my disabled brother as well. So I think my passion for gender equity is unquestionable. Nobody can question that. I cannot question that. But it comes from a personal crisis. And so I came to this country in 2005. I'm really privileged and grateful. I became a mom. I learned the landscape of navigating American system. But I immediately wanted to become my own entrepreneur. So I enrolled in this amazing program at the Women's Initiative in Oakland, where I had 12 weeks of learning how to start a business, how to grow a business, how to write your business plan. And in the meantime, I wanted to support African artisans, Tanzanian artisans who do custom wooden furniture in Tanzania. Because believe me, when I came to this country, I was like so shocked people do not have good furniture. Am I crazy? Like, it's so random, I know, but my passion, I had interior design, and I was like, I'm going to start a business, and I'm going to start a business by supporting African artisans in Tanzania.
Can I interrupt you? You can't give away all the game like that. We're going to talk, and I'll ask you about that, you know?
You can ask about
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, but, sorry, finish what you were saying.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I wanted to start a business, and I wanted to support artisans in Tanzania by manufacturing furniture from Tanzania and importing them here. And I wanted to start a business on office furniture, focusing on interior designing, as well as office furniture and outdoor furniture. So we manufactured, and I did everything. My business plan is still in existence today. It's close to 50 pages. I went to a bank and I said, can you give me a seed capital? But I was really young. I look young still today. They didn't take me serious. It's like, you're 12, what are you doing here? And I was so offended by that, super offended by that. I was like, are you kidding me? And so that was my ignorance too. Like, I had just come to this country. Hello, you need to slow down and like learn the system. So I learned the system, and I understood that I was facing both sexism and racism. They did not take me seriously because, hey, I'm a young black woman and I'm an immigrant, had an accent. I did not have capital investment that would say, this is what I have in terms of asset. You can trust me. You can give me the loan I need for me to start my business. Anyway, so I was disappointed by that. I decided to go to school. I finished college, and long story short, I came to I wanted to move to Seattle because in the Bay Area, we don't have large community of African, and my passion wanted to just be in the grassroots community was not fulfilled in the Bay Area, and I came here instead.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
So I guess I'm going to the point of like how I started my work, or should I continue?
We'll get to those details
Oh, perfect.
a little later.
Perfect.
I'll help you out. I'll keep it short because I know that's what you're hinting at. Keep it brief. So for me, is this? Oh, there we go. Oh, Lord Jesus. And if it doesn't, then I'll just bark because I can do that. Give me yours.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hello? Yes.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to keep this really brief because I know you want to get into the questions, and I'm going to give you the space because I know that's what you really want to hear. But for me, what started me on this what keeps me on this is my love for my people. And my people extend, and I want to be clear, my people extend from the continent of Africa into the Caribbean, into the Americas, wherever it is my people were taken, wherever it is my people still are. That is what pushes me forward, and that's what keeps me here, because we have to always remember why we are doing this. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Short.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you led us perfectly into the next question about incorporating Pan-Africanism.
See, I read the notes.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. And so for you guys, how did you incorporate Pan-Africanism into the work that you do, especially extending, back in the continent and here?
Thank you very much. So again, the foundation for One Vibe was in Kenya. When I moved to Seattle in June 2010, I didn't know really the situation of African people in the diaspora. And, I was mentioning earlier that, One Vibe does a lot of events, from Kijiji Night at Seattle Art Museum every February as part of Black History Month. This is one of the reactions that we had, especially, to ensure that African people are actively engaged with what's going on in the calendar and the history of other African people here outside of us. There's no deliberate interaction or engagement between the African and African American community unless we create events where they can come to and we can go to, unless they create events that we can collaborate on and work together on and learn about each other's style of work and how we approach projects and things like that. So, if you look at One Vibe lineups for all our events, it's almost always a balance of artists from the African and African American communities and other communities. So this is how we incorporate Pan-Africanism into our work. The other way is that we are creating a bridge between Seattle and Kenya by allowing artists from here, especially from the African American community, to go back home and collaborate with artists over there. For example, Yerim Sek he's Senegalese American, he's from the CD. Shout out to the people from the CD in the building. And he's been to Kenya, and now he's doing a lot of projects with people like Nazizi, and we are continuing to do that. There's a group of filmmakers from here that also went to Kenya to train a group of filmmakers at One Vibe who are now producing content from there locally. So, that's how we are, ensuring that we incorporate Pan-Africanism in our work. But also, teaching our kids Kiswahili, which is about to become the language of the continent. I have 3 kids, and sometimes they're very exhausted by how much, I'm kind of forcing Kiswahili into our lifestyle, which is rough because every material in this country is in English. So, the moment you want to instill Kiswahili speaking in your house, it's almost like, being an activist in the house.
What was the question again?
So how do you incorporate Pan-Africanism into the work that you do?
Great, thank you. So I utilize data. I started by understanding my community better, understanding African immigrant community better. So before I launched the organization, I took 3 months of my time to collect disaggregated data in the King County area, focusing on South Seattle, Kent, and Seatuck-Tukwila area. And I did that because I called King County and I said, can you tell me how many African immigrants are doing business and what businesses are and what those industries are? And they said, we cannot tell you this because we don't have that data. King County told me that, and I said, why? And they said, well, you guys are grouped under Black. And so I had to take the time to understand exactly, okay, yes, we're Black, I'm proud to be Black, but other community members have different needs, and those needs are language barrier, how to understand navigation in terms of the systems and of the ecosystem here in terms of business development. And so I took the time and I produced feasibility study, and I only surveyed African immigrant women. It was a very small sample because I did it myself. And then as soon as I launched, we had workshops, and we had African American women coming to brunch and workshops and asking us, is this just for African immigrant women? And I, as a Black feminist, a broad Black feminist, who really truly understand the importance of intersectional feminism, I had to take the step back and question myself. In what way am I doing this the right way? And if you look into the disparities, black women and disparities, like African immigrant women and African American women are the same in terms of, yes, we have different issues, but they're the same in terms of like the gaps. You know, black women diaspora are the largest growing pool of entrepreneurs in this country, and they receive only 0.2% of venture capital funding. Only 2% of that goes to women in general. So most white women are also left behind, but you cannot compare the numbers when it comes to black women. And they're not just African immigrant women, they're all black women. And so I incorporated Pan-Africanism by opening the doors to all black women diaspora, and I focus mainly on black women diaspora because I truly believe when black women are empowered in terms of economically, our men are also going to do better. Yes. Thank you so much. And in terms of how I go farther by that, I'm really grateful to take the trip with my brother this summer. Hopefully we'll be in Kenya. Yes, and so Pan-Africanism, I am a Pan-African, and I take that very seriously. Involving the community as a whole and understanding our issues as collective struggles is very, very important. And it goes beyond Pan-African. And so understanding data and how we are all grew up into that is very, very important.
Okay. Thank you. So just based on the movie Bound itself is, and you have to understand how Bound came about for those of you who have not seen the film. When I came to the United States, which is way before any of you showed up, I did not have this many black people looking back at me. I was at the University of Wisconsin. So I left Africa and landed in Wisconsin. Like, you leave blackness and land into whiteness. Like, it was literally that drastic with snow. Like, it was everything. You have the wrong shoes. Oh my God, it was a hot mess. We didn't even know where Wisconsin was. By the time we got there, we landed in Chicago, and we were like, yay, we're in America. Then we started to drive, and we started to see cows, you know. And then you start to question where you're going. You're like, where are we going? We have left America this way, these cows. And it was a mess. And then we get there, and then there's like 5 black people in a school of 5,000. And you're like, wow. So now I'm walking down the hallway and I see this really attractive boy. Ooh, he was cute. And I walk up to him, you know how we do. I was like, hey, you're twirling your hair. Like, so, where in Africa are you from? See, I'm thinking I'm smart. And this boy looks at me, bless his heart. And he stares at me and he says, I've never forgotten him. My name is Jerome Morris III. I'm from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. You people sold us. No, dude, I had a mission. He was still cute. That was a bump. That was a road bump. You're like, okay, this is a road bump. He was still cute. And so what that leads to is now, I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation about it. And so we did. And then what we figured out was we have 5 African students here at the Africa International Students Union and 15 students at the Black Students Union. And we're like, well, we all kind of look alike. So we merged the two. And that's when it began. Literally, that's how it began. It was like, okay, there is this division here, and I'm not understanding why. So let's figure it out. And we put the 2 groups of people together. Then you fast forward, I moved to Los Angeles, and now life is doing what life is doing. And I'm ending up in a community which is a predominantly black community, which is now gentrifying beyond belief. And I'm realizing I don't know my neighbors. And this is just to everybody here, because we also have some bad habits that we come with, some bad ideas about who African Americans are. We have these ideas that have been planted into your mind, so when you come in here, you need to keep yourself isolated. So you have that manifesting, and it was the man I was dating at the time was like, it's interesting, you don't know anybody in this neighborhood. And I was like, problem. Something has happened. What happened between the university and here? And then Bound came about. It was like me telling on myself, I got some bad ish going on. And if I accidentally swear, you have to excuse me. Sometimes I'm a sailor. I'll do my best. I'll try, really. I cannot promise anything. But, so that's how Bound came about. And it was a conscious decision for me. Every single project I've worked on, including Bound, is a conscious decision Because you have me, I'm an African. You have Aissatou Diallo, whose father is from Guinea, her mother is African American. Tene Carter, who's African American, and our DP was Iyambo Kwayana, who's from the Dominican Republic. Diaspora. Everything. Sharon Brathwaite, who did Seasons of Love with me, African American. Every choice, everybody I work with, I'm like, I'm the African in the room, I need an African American and a Caribbean. It has to be this triangle for me that has to consistently be done. Even in this space, as I'm looking, I'm scanning, I'm like, I need to see where are the African Americans, where are the Caribbean. Because if you don't have that, you're on a basketball court with 2/3 of your players on the seat, sitting down. So you're on the court with 1.7 people playing. The other 3 people are on the seat. You're not fully armed for the game. And we have to be fully armed for this. Because you have to be fully armed for this. Seriously. Because if you think I'm joking, then you just have to sit there in your moment and ask yourself, what the hell is NATO?
Thank you. What the hell is AFRICOM?
Yeah.
I have no acronym. I told you guys earlier these are powerful women, so I'm here to learn too, I'm here to learn too, but just to add to that, there's a lot of talk about Pan-Africanism, there's a lot of talk about Africa now, but there's also the action part of it that is extremely important. So taking the action to collaborate with an African-American person will help you learn how to work with them, will help you think about opportunities for them back home that would actually draw them back home. So, social media is one thing. It actually isolates you into, being a cheerleader, but doing the work that I'm hearing here and, being in the front line is very important. So as university, I know majority of you guys are students, right? And this is where it starts. This is where it starts. And it's also a privilege to be in an institution like this where you can start understanding how to influence policy and help people who are in the front line like some of us here. So it's an opportunity for us to figure out where do we go from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing seeing the work that these people are doing, and it reminds me of some of the great past Pan-Africanists who, like Kwame Nkrumah and Malcolm X, and those people recognizing the need for all of us, both here in America and Africa and Caribbean, to recognize our shared identity, our shared history, and kind of present our genuine selves to each other, despite of how we're portrayed by other people, so that we can then move forward and really build ourselves and arm ourselves to be able to fully support ourselves.
I have to piggyback on that real quick. I know we all love Barack Obama. People are like, oh, he's the greatest president ever. Do you even know how Barack Obama came to be? Do you know how Barack Obama even came to be? If it was not for Tom Boyer, and if it was not for, it was Tom Boyer, it was Martin Luther King, it was Tom Boyer, and it was the Kennedy airlift. If it was not for Pan-Africanism, you would not have Barack Obama's father in the United States doing what he did with the mother. You know what that was. and giving you the 44th president. I'm telling you, when you find each other and you just, I'm telling you, I am so excited for what is happening for this generation. I don't know if you see it. I don't know if you see it. But I see it. I don't know if you see it. If you see, even just looking at Black Panther, and you have to remember, Black Panther was not just what we as Africans on the continent did. Black Panther was moved from the United States. This is telling you that there are people here who are looking to reconnect. We have something, you have partnerships, you have brothers, you have siblings here who are waiting for you. I'm telling you guys, if you find each other, there is nothing Africa cannot do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And there's no excuse. No excuse.
So you hear it, no excuses, no excuses. And looking at the work that you guys do, I see it involves a lot of collaboration, and I want to see, want you to speak more to how you're able to collaborate with people and what that means for you guys' organization mission.
Okay, so we'll paint everything with an Pan-Africanist brush. So when you think about people like Malcolm X, I don't know if you all know, but he spent quite a significant amount of time in Tanzania. You know, I was learning, actually BBC, some of these media outlets have really good documentaries about key historical moments. So Malcolm spent a lot of time at the University of Dar es Salaam, but, you know, through some of the professors that were coaching him, you know, as an independent student. Then when you look back through history, somebody, you know, so Malcolm was there during his exile. When you think about, you know, the Prophet Muhammad, he was also in Africa, you know, for exile. Africa is a safe haven. It's the place where a lot of people who have led historical movements normally go for safety. Jesus also was born in Africa, and, you know, he, according to what I hear, you know, he was there in Egypt just for safekeeping. Moses, you know, was in Egypt for like 30 years in exile, you know. So we are from a place that is special. If you look at all these important books and literature, we are lucky, and we have a mission here. And normally when I think about my work and collaboration, I know that I can't do it by myself, you know. In Manyata, where I grew up, resources were very, very limited. And we grew up in a household where my mom was the second wife in a polygamist marriage. So that alone is a disadvantage, because a lot of second wives are like housemaids, you know. They work and they do a lot. But my mom was rebellious like them. You know, she apparently, the arrangement there with my dad was that, my dad was a road construction engineer. He was building a bridge across a river in the village where my mom came from. So in this village, to gift my dad, they were like, you know, we'll give you the most beautiful girl in our village so that you can go and educate her. And so my mom left at 16, and, you know, my dad is 20 years older than her. And so after a few years of being married, she was like, you know, you agreed with my village that I'll go to school. Where is the school, you know? And so she walked out of the marriage with some of my older siblings at the time and went and lived in the slum, and, you know, figured out how to go to college and started a business. She was working at the local hospital. You know, she was a orthopedic technician, so repairing broken bones. And so, you know, I grew up in an environment where a woman was the leader, and I was being given instructions by such a leader, strong person that, you know, you'd see that she's left work, and, you know, we had baskets of tomatoes that we'd be bringing to her little stall. And before we knew it, her little business became the primary distributor of milk and bread in the neighborhood. So all of this was possible through collaboration. She brought in her kids, community members, and if you look at the work of One Vibe here in Seattle or back in Kenya, you find that there's quite a community of people doing it. For example, Avole Night that is held at Cafe Avole, which is one of the sponsors for this event today. It's being produced by African students and African people from the diaspora who are not even from Kenya. And these are people I've taken on, and I'm mentoring them, showing them this is how to do an event here in the States from the beginning to the end, and pay yourself while doing it. These are the people that you can partner with in order for you to do this type of things. You know, I've created partnerships with some of the biggest musicians from Africa, from Sauti Sol, Samini, and, you know, the list goes on. You know, from Ghana, people like Blitz the Ambassador, and, you know, all of this, if you could not build a relationship with people, for them to trust what you're trying to accomplish, for you to be vulnerable and tell people that, look, I need your help. I know this is your rate, but you have to do this because of Africa, because of me, because of my community. If you can convince somebody to do something like that for the sake of the continent, for the sake of your community, then you're on your way to being successful in whatever you're doing. Because, like you're mentioning earlier, we come from a history of a lot of trauma. Our ancestors were forced out of our communities to America. And the people that were taken were the healthiest, the brightest, the most courageous, all the doctors and the lawyers that were, serving our civilized cities and societies at that time, were brought here to build this society. And so we have to find them and work with them, involve them, and overcome the trauma. It will take a long time for us to be able to get to a place where we feel 100% comfortable working with African Americans, because at the refugee and visa processes, you're told that don't interact with these people, they're gangsters, they're lazy, they're this and that, but you have to find out for yourself, You have to date some of these people in order for you to actually see if they're really lazy. You have to work on a project with them to actually see if what you're hearing is really true. But we also can't work in isolation as Africans or African Americans, because we've been known as the bigger people. We've been known as the place where all human beings came from. So we've always stood out to be on the right side of history by always standing up and saying, okay, this and this has happened, but how are we going to move on from here? How are we going to actually do business instead of you oppressing me, so that everything is clear? We need each other. The Western countries need the resources from Africa, and Africa is ready for business. But how are we going to do it in a transparent manner where we know that, the tea from Kenya is going to benefit the farmers from Kenya? The African immigrants in Seattle are going to get employed by Starbucks, without jumping so many loops because of who you look like. Personally, I've tried applying for jobs at Starbucks and I've never found them. Farmers back at home who have a desire to supply their stuff here to companies like Starbucks, they supply them and they get here, but these people are always poor. The cocoa plantation workers like you still struggle to pay for your education, while people are consuming, who are consuming these things here, pay a lot of money for them. Where does the money go? So transparency, not only for Africans and African leaders, but also accountability for the other people that want to do business with Africa.
In terms of collaboration, I took a huge chunk of work and I said, I cannot do this by myself. So even our vision says to close both gender and racial gap in business development for Black women diaspora by collaborating with institutions, CBOs, entrepreneurs themselves, and government. And so I do my level best to share the work that I do and also go into the communities. Like up to today, we're just now beginning to have our own office, and thank God we'll be with Black Dot hopefully. But so far we've served our community through community centers in the community, owned and operated by people of color mostly, and also libraries. We've collaborated with a lot of King County libraries, Seattle libraries, trying to really get the work out, but also collaborating and telling people we exist, we're here, we're doing the work, and we want your support as well. That really matters a lot. One of the struggles that I've found within this work and within the nonprofit structure in Seattle in general is majority of Africans do not really collaborate intentionally. We kind of piggyback here and there, we think we know each other better, and we attend community events and stuff, but we don't really drive impact collectively together, most intentionally, and really be deliberate about it. What is your mission? Are you mission driven? How, in what way are you going to collaborate with people to achieve that mission? I think we suffer a lot, and I don't want to blame people. I'm not going to point the finger to others, but I'm going to point the finger back to myself as a founder and say, did I check in with myself? Am I approaching this work with the colonial practices, right? Because we're all educated within the white supremacy structure, right? We see ourselves and we judge ourselves and we point fingers. I would say specifically for Africans here, okay? I'm going to leave African American brothers and sisters aside, and Afro-Caribbean as well, because I've seen this mostly within ourselves. And it's especially people who were born and raised back home in Africa. We come here, just like my sister said, we judge. We look at African Americans and we judge sometimes. But even within ourselves, we are operating within the, we were raised to be xenophobias, that's for sure. Like, there's a reason why Somalis were burned alive in South Africa just by operating businesses in Africa by your own fellow African brother, right? And so we don't really understand ourselves better. And until we do that, then we can like we can be more intentionally in terms of collaboration. I struggle a lot. Sometimes I want to quit because of the frustrations of my own community, not the white men, my own community. And so I think we need to be more intentional about this and really psychologically ask ourselves, are we really for Pan-African? Are we really for African community? Are we really for Black diaspora? Are we really for Black prosperity and Black, what is our dignity as a whole, as Black communities? And it can only happen by collaboration, by seeing what needs to be fixed and not waiting for foreign aid and not waiting for some bigger institutions to come and save us, because we operated like that. We were raised to believe somebody's gonna come and help us, right? And I think it's not.
She's raising so many good points. I'm just taking notes.
I grew up frustrated as a young girl in Tanzania, and potholes on the roads, right? Like, it's not like we can't fix it ourselves, but because the foreign aid has crippled our minds. Truly crippled our minds. We are totally free in a way, right? Like, we're free. I can wake up and pay rent and take a shower and go see somebody and have a coffee. But mentally, we're still enslaved. And I think that's the real work we need to work in, and that requires going deep within, unashamed, and saying, I'm a colonized mind, all right? I need some work to do. So there. I try my best, but collaboration is gonna, collective impact. It's gonna take for a long time.
Decolonizing the mind.
Yeah.
I'm just going to applaud you. And I'm probably going to say some things that are going to really annoy some people, but I'm going to go there because she opened the door. And so I'm just going to walk right in. And you are so right about the mind. And one fundamental thing, let me just deal with the issue of collaboration. I think they've made some really interesting points about collaboration. One of the key things that I had to learn for myself when it comes to collaboration is simply this, that if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to be in a different room.
Thank you.
And what you need to do is you need to go into yourself and take that little thing you call an ego, you need to pull it out of yourself and put it in your back pocket and let somebody teach you something about some shit. I'm sorry. Let somebody teach you something about something. So that is fundamental. But we have a problem, and you've really hit on it. We have this thing called the Messiah complex that I can't stand, that unless it is stamped, it has a stamp of approval by someone from the West or a white person, we don't see value in it.
Thank you.
Okay? I don't understand now why coconut oil is a thing. When my mother used to put coconut oil in my hair when I was a child.
Yes.
Why is it a thing now? Why were we using Nivea when we had coconut oil? Then it was taken from us. Then we said, no, now we got to use Nivea. Now they're saying use coconut oil. We're like, oh, coconut oil. We've always had coconut damn oil. Right? Suddenly, if you go to Whole Foods, they're sending you these sticks that you used to brush your teeth. Remember back in the day when people used to brush their teeth, they'd be like, oh, look at him, he doesn't have a toothbrush. Now it's at Whole Foods for $20. I'm sorry. But we need to start seeing value in who we are. See, here's the thing. The way we are all thinking right now, and I don't want to say it's programming, but you're right. It's a very Western way of thinking. And I think the issue for us Africans is instead of trying to go forward, we need to go back. We need to go back. Colonialism, then go farther back than that. And that's one of the reasons I say it's very important to find the Caribbeans and the African Americans. Is because let me tell you something. These people are holding on to things you are so eager to forget.
Thank you.
If you want to figure out what African spirituality was, you better go to Cuba. Because they have it. We need to go back. We need to go because this system that we're living in, as you can see, is falling apart. And then they're going to look to you to help save it because you are the source. You're Africa. You're holding on to a wisdom that is the wisdom and is the source of life. You've got to find it. Because when all this comes crashing down, you're going to be the person who's going to have to save it. And I really honestly believe that.
So I just wanted to add a couple of things. this idea of decolonizing the mind. It's a book that was written by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a celebrated author from Kenya that was in Seattle last Friday. We were there together, and I see a few people in the audience who are there as well. But Ngugi wa Thiong'o said that to decolonize the mind, you have to first accept who you are, accept your name, accept your identity, and use that as the base. For example, if it were a mother that was with a child, the child takes the mother as a base, and even if they were at the airport and the child was running around trying to hide away from the mother, when the child looks around and sees the mother, he or she would feel like, oh, the base is there. But if she turns around and the mother is missing, the child would start crying. And so we, as the African nation globally, from Brazil to back in Africa, right now we are not seeing the base. So we are scared, we are not grounded in who we are, and so we can't even do business with people in a manner that we really understand the numbers clearly. We are operating from this place of lack of self-confidence, lack of authority, even though the resources that are being negotiated are our resources. So it's a matter of how do we decolonize our minds individually and then collectively. How do we take risks together? For example, even traveling with an African American to a place like Kenya, that is also a process of decolonizing the mind because it's risky. Who wants to leave the comfort of their living room and many TV channels and Starbucks and McDonald's and go to Africa where you have to go to a bathroom at night where the bathroom is over there.
Boy.
Brother.
Come on, no.
This is the reality. We can't hide from this. I grew up
In the rural areas, yeah.
No.
In some areas, yes.
Where I grew up,
Some
the
areas.
bathroom was shared by 30 families.
Yeah.
We can't bullshit around this type of stuff.
Yeah.
We have to speak about it clearly the way it is, and we also have to change it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah?
yeah. Yeah, we have to speak it the way it is clearly without sugarcoating it, and then we figure out the solution.
Right.
Because there's this hype of, oh, Africa is great, and this is there, Africa is great. But there are problems that we have to also be willing to face and deal with. So that's why I left Manyata to be here to face these problems and talk to people that are willing to face them as well and deal with them. But we can't say that here we have problems too. But there are facilities that we have here that we don't have back home. How can we have them there in a way that we also improve our dignity? I still have friends when I go back home that live in Kibera and Manyata, and I visit them there, and I go to these bathrooms I'm describing. And these things are reality. So I want you to guide the conversation there where we can actually react to this current heat.
It's not a current heat.
Current heat.
It's not a heat. You're right.
What current heat?
I want to...
What current heat?
Yeah, quick one. Yeah, I just want to mention quickly, you're right in certain aspect, but honestly speaking, there are some aspects of my life that were better back home than here. And I think we are talking about resources and we're talking about currency, we're talking about developments and funding. All these things are actually designed to see it as a lacking piece of Africa, but that's not. Africa has fed the world. Africa will continue to be a source of resources, right? We come from such a beautiful, powerful, thriving place had it not be for Western colonization. That said, I want to say there's a cultural richness of Africa that is not talked about, and that is something that we need to understand and actually celebrate and be able to celebrate and not shy away from it. For example, when I was a young girl growing up in Tanzania, I remember on Fridays I would stay outside and wait for my father to come home. And I remember him coming home and then seeing a neighbor who died. His casket was being carried to the cemetery. My dad was a Muslim, and he felt the privilege, or rather, he felt the need to humanize that moment where he crossed the street and he went and grabbed the casket and went to the cemetery. This is a neighbor from across the street that I didn't even know, but that is the cultural richness of how people are able to relate to one another back home, and we don't have it here. And I'm bringing that because it's a connection that deeply is so important in how people with scarcity were able to depend on one another and being in community with one another. You know, like you're not alone back home. And that's something that we need to celebrate. We don't have it here. And I believe African immigrants can bring that in this context as well.
I agree, but I want
Seriously, there's richness in that.
I want to respond to that.
It's not just resources and funding. It's not just resources and funding, and we all have different experiences. The experiences that my brother is raising here, it's not going to be my experience. But we also need to be mindful of generalizing Africa as a continent, because the media has done so much damage on our psyche collectively, and I'm not going to contribute to that. So we have to, yeah.
You know, there are two places, there are a couple of classes in Africa. But can I just clarify? 30 seconds.
Well, we have to get to the next question, but I think, especially for all of us, for us young folks going into the future, we have to understand both the realities of Africa right now, but also the richness and the possibilities that exist within it. So we can't live in a dual, we can't have a dualistic perspective. We have to be able to accept everything that Africa is and everything that it can be. And so we have to see what's going on and say, okay, that exists, but also there's, like she alluded to, the richness of the culture, which we cannot lose moving forward. We have to be able to recognize that, but then also make everything better in general. We have to be able to move forward in a better way. And I think it would be important for us to be able to understand, how did you guys cultivate support networks as you guys are building these organizations? Because there's a lot of stress, like you said, you've thought about quitting multiple times. There's difficulties that come with building these organizations. Can you guys quickly speak to how you were able to build that support network for you guys to be able to do what you do in such a difficult area?
For me, the work I do is not for me. It's for my community, for my larger family, for the larger African, African people. And I've seen, I've been in the struggle, and I'm still in the struggle. I've been running One Vibe for almost 14 years, and there are, people that I know that are white. I'm also married to a white lady. I have 3 kids who are from this biracial marriage. Mm-hmm. And so the things that I've learned in the process clearly, do not only indicate my understanding of the idea of the struggle is real. Working a 9-to-5 job, coming from the slum, and being able to do the work consistently without not giving up on it. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not everybody that can do that. In 2008, when we registered One Vibe as a non-profit organization, we were a group of DJs in my little room in the slum. We had done a show that I was describing at the beginning of this conversation, and the money from that show registered One Vibe. And here, I've been mobilizing artists, and we are doing a lot of our shows even without being paid, even without grants, even without sponsorship, because we believe in the work, because we know it's bigger than us, And so, really, the struggle is not important. The mission is what is important.
Thank you. Going off what my brother said, also, yeah, the struggle has always been real and will always be real. But when you're mission driven, you're able to move past that. And so for me, the struggle that I've faced so far is sexism and racism, and being an immigrant. I'm constantly being asked, mainly by white folks, why are you doing this? What made you do this? And for me, I had to question, first of all, when people assume you're working on economic justice and you're a woman and you're black and you're focusing mainly on black women diaspora, they have to ask some questions. And I actually ask myself, why am I being asked this question? And oftentimes it's because those solutions have to come from white folks. And so they don't understand why you're taking on such a big role. And it hurts the most when your own community questions that too. It's like, we can't support you. You don't have a lot right now, but we'll support you when you're 5 million. When when you're 5 million when your budget is 5 million, maybe we can support you on that. So that's been the biggest.
Which is a way of discriminating.
It's a big discrimination, yeah. And it's actually, when it comes from your own community, it hurts the most because you're like, we have to build together. You understand we have these gaps, right? There's a reason why we have so many different community centers in Seattle area operated by African immigrant women, African immigrant population. The Eritrean community, the Somali community, Ethiopian community centers. Yes, there's a need for us to be able to have our, sections and whatnot, but when you're looking into the big picture, it's almost like it's not important for us to have these different community centers. So that's been a big struggle. And it hurts the most because you're like, how are we able to drive impact if we are so separated and we're doing things in silos? And so going back to the mind, decolonizing the mind is something that I think we need to work on. And so that's why African Women Business Alliance incorporates African African women in general, not just Somali women or Kenyan women or Namibian women. And so it's very important for us to understand collectively on that end, but it's a struggle. I understand it's a struggle every day, and I'm hit by many, many things every day. But when you're mission driven, like my brother said, you don't let things stop you. As well as, especially when you do something that is unique, it has not been done before, and you understand it can only be done by us. So I'm not going to give up on that. I'm going to continue to fight the good fight.
So for me, where the struggle, I'll be honest, I love this struggle. I really do. Because there's nothing that shows you just what you're capable of until you're meeting a struggle that you're like, I don't know if I can do this, and then you do it.
Yep.
There's nothing that defines who you are than the things you have overcome. I really believe that. So, this is being recorded. Can you erase this part out? Because I'm about to say something that should not be, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
When you watch Bound, that movie was made on, I was unemployed at the time, so it was choosing between, am I going to eat food or am I going to edit? I had to learn how to edit my own film. I learned how to cut that whole thing. Yes, this is my first film. This is my first film ever.
It was amazing.
Yeah, ever. You have people start with short films, then they go to a feature. I was like, I want to tell this story. But in the feature, of course, in 2 years, I was like knocked the hell out because it was so exhausting.
Yeah.
But you have no concept of what you can do until you start upon a road that scares the hell out of you. Mm-hmm. And you take it to the very end. Mm-hmm. The struggle is real, but guess what? The struggle is something you need. Now, when it comes to racism and sexism and all that stuff, that's all extra. Mm-hmm. But that's noise.
Yeah. Oof.
Right? That's noise. If you just go into your space and say, this is my vision, this is my goal, and I'm going to attain, I'm walking from here. If I was to walk from here to that Brooklyn sign, I can do it. I may stop because now I have to talk to Howie over here. I'm talking to her over there. All these people, and I'm trying to get there. You're going to eventually get there. It depends on how many distractions you want to encounter. But if you tell Howie, I have to get there in 2 seconds, you just go. Yeah. So the struggle, yeah. So that's about. And then if you just have people of like mind with you on this road that you're walking with. Then now instead of Howie stopping you to go take you to the kitchen to go give you a lollipop or something, she walks with you to the Brooklyn sign. Then that's something different. So that's how you also get the, like what they say, a weight shared is a load shared is a load, whatever. It's some British phrase. Something about a load that you share with someone else becomes lighter, basically. Yeah, so there. A loaf, a problem shared is half solved. There's something to do with a loaf there somewhere too. But I also wanted to say to my brother's point over here, we also have to remember, and I think this is just because of the nature of who we are, we also have to remember as sovereign states, African sovereign states are like what? The oldest is like what, 70 years old? America is like 400 years old.
Yeah.
We are at 70, and look at how far we've come at 70 years old. What will we be at 100?
Well, because we gave America 200 years.
Yeah, but I'm just saying we have a way to go, but also let's take moments when we have done good things, to take that moment to celebrate the good things that we've done. Because sometimes if you don't take the moment to breathe and just say, good and faithful, you've done well, then we get too hard on ourselves. But sometimes it's good to also take measure of what we have achieved so far. Yeah.
One more thing. As a woman, sorry, I know this is all love, okay? As a woman, I think I was raised to give, and to thank God I see the notes from the women. Thank you. Especially African women, we are so conditioned to give all the time. Black women are constantly sacrificing themselves. Yes. Thank you, sister. So, my big policy, personal policy that I've built on, my child understand this, my family understand this, is I have to have radical self-care for myself. If we are in charge of our families, we're in charge of our organizations, we're in charge of our businesses, and we're in charge of community development, we have to have time for ourselves. And it's a new concept, but I'm owning it unapologetically. Radical self-love for Black women.
Yeah, I understand these great minds have so much to say, and we can learn so much from what they're doing and use that to inspire us and keep what they've said in mind as you go throughout this day here at this conference and be able to carry it and carry forward your own mission. So please give a hand for these wonderful panelists.